What do you think Chekhov's relationship to his moment, how did that affect his work? Because...
Oh, in massive ways. I mean, that's a PhD thesis and a lifetime of work to get to the bottom of that one. But, he was, first of all, a part of the development of theater and literary life at the turn of the century. He was influenced by Ibsen, for instance, certainly impacted by Tolstoy and Nietzsche and the modernist movement that was starting to gain steam, certainly influenced profoundly by, I think his grandfather was born a serf, I believe. So anyway, 1861 was the liberation of the serfs, and that was a long social process that probably continues to this day in terms of the complexities of Russian history. He was in it. He was having to deal with censorship. They had to submit their plays to censors. So the politics of the play is restrained. And there's only so much he could say or do, and we don't know what he would have done had there not been censorship. I think that he was so acutely aware of trying to build effectively as a person, not as a political entity, but as a person to contribute to the health of the world he lived in as best he could. As a doctor, as a philanthropist, he built hospitals, and he wrote these plays, I think, as a salve in a way. He was quoted as saying, or he wrote maybe in letters, I can't remember, that the plays are, partially an attempt to say, let's look at ourselves. Let's look at how we behave. Maybe if we see more clearly how we behave, that we'll have some way of contending with it, of growing, I can't remember exactly how he put it, but something like that. So I think that he worked, that's the other thing. He was a worker. He just worked and worked. He took care of people. He took care of things. His short stories there's an enormous amount of work in them. They're measured in such subtle ways, as are the plays. So, as much as I think he was obviously engaged in the world, like deeply engaged in the world, he was also a worker.
There is just something ironic about the way that he's talked about, and we've talked about him as someone who wrote these pieces that, if not timeless, they certainly survive. They seem to be able to cross the barriers of time and culture with, more ease than other writing. But it also feels like, as you say, like he was writing for and out of an incredibly specific cultural moment. That he was so acutely speaking to a moment, and there was something about that moment and something about, I guess, his voice in that moment that seemed to transcend that moment, or at least
because he's a dramatist. He was a craftsman. He was creating drama. So all the elements that he was putting together create, again, like a piece of music. Our translation is interesting because Simon Stevens has chosen to de-Russify it. There's nothing Russian in it, which is a choice that I was willing to take on. Theater can be so many things, and whenever anybody applies a kind of truism to theater, like if the given time is not specific, then those kinds of criticisms to me are irrelevant. Every theatrical offering has its own purpose, point of view, energy, presence, something. that is not to be judged by any truisms that already exist. And I really deeply believe that.